Welcome, crypto enthusiasts, to the Independent Reserve Podcast.
Okay, episode 19 of the Independent Reserve Podcast. Nick Fletcher, OTC Desk trader and Head of Business Solutions at Independent Reserve.
I feel welcome to be here. Actually, this is the first time I've been into this room because, I see you guys like, I feel like, what if I come in and, you're interviewing the Queen or something, and I just like, do I stay still? Maybe you guys won't notice me if I don't move.
Don't move too much.
Don't like to come in here just in case.
Thanks
good to be here.
Thanks for joining us today, Nick. There's lots happening in the market. You've been on the OTC desk with Independent Reserve since day one. Our OTC desk was probably one of the first in the country back in 2018 when you joined. The market has changed, needless to say, a lot. In fact, it's a completely different market. It's almost like a brand new industry since you first joined, so you've seen it all. And looking forward to hearing some insights from your time trading.
It's kind of, a lot of waves. It comes in waves. It's like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And each time you turn around, you're like, okay, I guess we're in a new phase now.
Yeah. Actually, and we've got to start from the beginning. We've got to start with how'd you first get in touch? How did you get into crypto? But how did you come across Independent Reserve? Because you've been around since almost day one.
I played a sports game which doesn't get played anymore called squash, and I was playing with a guy who's in my team called Lasanka. Some of you might know him. He's now CEO of the Singapore business of Independent Reserve. He was a co-founder of Independent Reserve back in the day with Adrian and Adam. He'd been talking to me about Bitcoin and trying to get me to do something there. And really, I should have been more interested than I was. I'm sort of technical at heart, so I always thought, I should just check this thing out and understand it better, but I never did. Probably took me a year or two, and I think this is a common story on a lot of people. They hear about it, and then they're like, I'll get to that later.
First dismiss it.
Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't, I dismissed it because I didn't believe in it. I was just like, I just wasn't interested, or I had other things to do. Maybe I was playing computer games, I don't know. I didn't even have kids back then. There was really no excuse.
Was it League of Legends?
It wasn't League of Legends, yeah. It was actually World of Warcraft. No, I didn't. It wasn't. I did play World of Warcraft, but I didn't. It wasn't back then. I quit long before. He eventually convinced me, and so I signed up with an account. I put $1,000 in, and I bought like 14 Bitcoins or whatever $1,000 got me back then. And then of course, I sold it later, thinking I was this like legendary trader. Anyway, I think that's, again, a similar story for a lot of people. I think they've done the right thing and they just didn't have a long enough time horizon. But he got me into it and eventually convinced me to work here. And it was the best move of my life.
Yeah, I bet. What was it like back then?
We were working in a little office where there was just enough room for 3 people in one of the office. And then we had hired another little office down the hall which had no windows. It was literally just like a closet. And there was 3 of us in this closet as well. And those 3 of us are still at the company. We're all sort of employee 3, 4, 5, and 6, which is great. They're all really good people, really clever, know what they're doing, great hires, and got Independent Reserve off to an amazing start after sort of Adrian, the co-founder, really had kind of done it solo for a long time. It was interesting times. I learned a whole bunch of stuff about banking from one of the banking guys who knew a lot of stuff and also really liked to talk. But I was kind of there in a support role more, managing support teams, and actually did a lot of. So in the small, these small companies, you get
wear a lot of hats.
You wear all the hats. So I think I ran the marketing, I ran support, I was in support. If support was a problem, I'd escalate to myself. This kind of stuff. You just sort of, you do what you can to make everything work. As I say, I've come from a technical background, so I've ended up doing a lot of technical stuff, sort of infrastructure-wise internally, as well as, I liaise with our developers every day, pretty much. You just end up doing all sorts of stuff. And I think that's sort of, when people get introduced, new employees of the company, people struggle to sort of know how to define my role. And they come there like, this guy just kind of does a bunch of stuff. And because I've been here for so long, I often know like answers to a lot of the early questions that people have. So
There's an unwritten rule for anyone, and I certainly learned it pretty early. If you don't know what's happening, ask Nick. Or, even if I'd asked Adrian or something, they're like, oh, that's more of a Nick thing, like, which is, so you kind of know that you've, what's the word? Part of the woodwork, but.
Yeah, I'm rusted on.
Know everything. They're right. Well, it's going to be good to talk. Actually, what would be really interesting is, I think, so Nick, you started with Independent Reserve in 2018, which is only, I guess, 7 years ago, but in crypto years, it's like 3 decades. And things were pretty different then. I'd actually be fascinated to see when you came on in 2018, as you said, the OTC desk, the over-the-counter trading desk, was just getting started. And we were probably one of the first in Australia. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I imagine so.
Yeah.
There was like, if you have to go back to the Wayback Machine, but I don't think anyone had OTC on their websites.
I'll tell you a funny thing, Nick. I often get, when I'm out with people, like, our OTC desk now probably services, I don't know, 1,000 odd clients, I'd guess, right? And you have, since 2018, you've been the predominant person that's dealt with a lot of those people.
Yep.
And so you've dealt with hundreds of, if not 1,000 odd different OTC clients. And yet you probably you don't do a lot of FaceTime necessarily because it's all over chat and whatnot.
No.
And I'll often, when I'm out, because I spend a lot of time actually speaking, potentially meeting with them face to face, they'll always be like, do you know Nick? Do you know Nick? I'm like, yeah.
No, he doesn't exist.
Is this guy real?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, Nick's a real, like, his real name Nick? I'm like, yeah, his real name is Nick. Yep. So since 2018, that's a long time in crypto. So yeah, be interested to see what sort of changes you've seen over that time, particularly given that, Independent Reserve probably had to, from scratch, create an OTC desk, which was the first sort of crypto OTC desk in the country. Yeah.
I reckon the first people using it were probably pretty nervous. Like this is a new thing. They don't see it anywhere else. They're going with a company that's, at that stage, I guess we were like 4 years old, which was, even at that stage, pretty old for a crypto company. Like, you think about Binance. Binance was probably like 6 months old at that stage. We're, fairly significantly older than them at that point. It was definitely a feeling out situation. So our main trader at the time who set up the desk, he had experience in the traditional finance area, so he knew sort of the general flow of things. But because it was also new. The tools didn't exist back then to do the trading like that exists now, and that exists in the traditional finance space. So we just had to sort of figure things out. Things were a lot more clunky, a lot more manual, and it was fine because there weren't that many deals. People weren't so interested in doing that kind of stuff.
Yep. And the types, I imagine the types of people you saw also changed quite a lot. In 2018, it was just pretty much retail Australia only. Now we have a desk in Singapore, which covers Singapore and extending into Dubai hours. So it runs now effectively till about 10 p.m. or so Australia time. Is that right?
Yes, as of next week, actually, we'll be running till 10 p.m.
Yeah, and like I said, it went from, I guess, you mentioned before, sort of individual retail guys. So I guess trading in 2018 when Bitcoin price was, say, 4,000 odd a coin, and you'd be like, oh man, I can't believe I'm doing a 20 Bitcoin deal or whatever, which is huge now. And I guess now, particularly say in Singapore, we're dealing predominantly with, say, corporates and businesses who use payment and crypto as their primary means to move money international for trade. Yeah, it's the stablecoin space is just wild, and you hear people talk about it a lot. And I guess from the retail side of things, people don't use it that much. Maybe they used Tether to send between exchanges, or you flee to safety to something like Tether, but it's kind of like this middle currency. Whereas on the OTC desk, we do the volumes of Tether and stablecoins, USDC, and all of them. And like RLUSD now is picking up. I saw a stat say there's something like, I can't remember what it is now, $3 billion a week traded, or it was maybe more than that, I can't remember, 30 billion. It was a big number, and I was not expecting that. The stablecoin market is just huge. Everyone uses it, and it's used very sort of much transactionally. Cumberland, which is a large trading firm, I guess, out of Singapore, they're looking, to create like an FX market effectively for stablecoins. which would be fascinating to kind of see that up and running, because like the banks have such a monopoly on that, and they charge really high fees for what should be now a almost free, near free instant transaction through crypto.
Yeah, it's the legacy market sort of holding on to their income stream as long as they can. But you can see on the horizon it's not going to be there for long. Yeah, Cumberland, it's like part of DRW there. They're a huge company. And they've got, they're really pushing the stablecoin stuff. I know they've been looking at the Aussie stablecoins as well. New Zealand stablecoins, I think even. I mean, I struggle to see flows at the moment for that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I guess you got to have someone pushing, like trailblazing. I think it'll probably pay off, because as I was saying before, the stablecoin flow on the OTC desk is just huge, and it's not people speculating; it's people using it for their business.
Yeah, I think that's the fascinating thing, right? It's just it's a BAU kind of transaction. It's not a,
and it's better, it's cheaper, it's faster, it's more efficient. There's less friction. You know, they can get their business, moving money around, and then they've got this competitive edge against anyone who doesn't do it. And so it's great to see, and we're here for it.
At the end of 2021, when the market was still pumping pretty hard, I remember sitting down with Lasanka and we kind of worked out our business strategy. At that stage, the sales team was just him and I, and we were thinking about what we're going to do for the year ahead, into 2022. What verticals we're going to attack and how we're going to do it, all this kind of stuff. And the one thing we didn't talk about was money remittance businesses at the beginning of 2021. And it was kind of early into 2022, before it had proverbial had really hit the fan, that we kind of cottoned on that, actually remittance businesses are starting to be really good business. We already had a couple, but we weren't really aware of, kind of that there was a competitive edge there. And then by the end of 22, and of course 2022 for crypto in general was pretty horrible. We had FTX and everything else that went down that year, Terra Luna, you name it. It was, that was like the biggest revenue source, or biggest new client acquisition channel, was a business model that we weren't even looking at the beginning of that year. And now that segment has only gotten bigger and stronger and more broadly accepted as a BAU strategy for these businesses. I
think you've just sort of encapsulated crypto pretty quickly. It's like, this thing didn't exist, and then like turn your head for a second and it's the biggest thing in the whole space. And it's just, everything's, it's energizing to see that stuff, because how many other businesses aren't using crypto yet, but we're going to turn our heads for a second, and then boom, they've like suddenly realized how good this thing is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they can somehow make it work for their business, and it's just more efficient, more cost effective and whatever.
We saw there was lots of big JP Morgan, so JPM coin, I think, and it's all really internally for them, but there's a lot of volume in that coin, not because of speculation, but great example. I was at the Swans one time with a guy who worked for a bank. I won't name the bank, and he was saying that he has clients that work in the mining.
Morgan?
the original. They'd cryogenically unfrozen him and brought him back to life. But he was saying that, like, for example, like he has a big multinational mining company, and they'll have an account an internal account. This is so bank to bank within the bank, AUD account and also an NZD account. And you'd think in today's modern age was just you're going internally within the bank.
It's a database call, right?
Right, but they still got to send it via the SWIFT network internally to get it from AUD into NZD. And so these people, like a multinational, were transferring large amounts of AUD into NZD, and it was taking 24 plus hours to get the money to show up. Right, which is
ripe for
it's ripe for disruption. Yeah. You're like, mate, you could even JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, who was like, I guess, anti-crypto for a while, was like, we can just use like a stable coin of our own and just move it between Europe and our US branches to move money instantly.
Even that sort of structure. I mean, there must be internal accounting reasons for it, but yeah, like the banks right now, we can. It used to take a day for clearing to send AUD over the DD network. And now it's sort of instant. They kind of figure stuff out. And then we've also got this NPP thing, which allows you to do it literally 24/7 instant. It's even better.
That's for AUD, not necessarily AUD.
AUD, yes, absolutely. But if it's going intra-bank, it should just be a database call. Like, I'm not sure if you remember back to the old Silvergate and what was the other one called? Silvergate
Signature.
And Signature Bank times. So they both had these internal blockchain ledgers where you could transfer funds from one account to another, only internally, never left the bank, and they built this blockchain for it. And it's kind of, at the time, I was like, okay, like, I'm happy for them because they're using blockchain and that's sort of crypto adjacent. But why? It's a database inside. It's an internal transaction. Why do they need it? And I don't understand, like JP Morgan, again, is the bank so big that they can't possibly have one computer system that, puts, reverses a number here and puts a number here, or they just don't trust themselves. And that's why blockchain is good, because they can be sure on a blockchain that, there's no double spending.
It's a good question.
And I don't understand there must be some smart dudes who've figured this out and decided that this does make sense, because I can't believe all of these banks, and there's another bank that does it now as well.
It'd be great.
Bank and
would be a great question to ask. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just relaying what I was told. I could be completely off the mark there.
No. You're saying is correct, but I just don't understand why. Why do they need this?
I don't know.
Answer. I want to know why.
I can't understand. No, I can't understand. Okay. Well, so I guess you kind of got introduced to, say, crypto in, say, 2018 through Lasanka, and you've seen a lot of changes over that period of time, because you've been working full time in it and actually sort of leading, with Independent Reserve, at least in Australia, sort of pioneering the way, the OTC desk, all this kind of stuff. What would be the biggest changes, just generally speaking, that you've seen? I guess if you could go back and say, hey, go back into 2018 self and go, hey, here's the things that's going to be like in 2025. Like, what stuff would kind of go, well, I did not see that coming?
I don't know if there is anything that was wildly unexpected. I guess the stablecoin flow was probably unexpected. So back in the day, I don't even know if stablecoins existed. When did Terra come about? They were kind of the first one. I don't remember exactly when they started, but it was all actual crypto trades back then. So it was only speculation. And I guess, as a diehard crypto person, even back then, I was always like, crypto is going to be this. We're going to, it's going to run the world, or whatever. Maybe not run the world, but it's going to be, a major part of the finance system in the future. And so when the whole remittance stuff and companies using crypto as a way of transacting and making their businesses work, that wasn't a wildly, oh my God, I can't believe, thinking back, I would never have expected that. But it was a real sort of punch the air moment where I'm like, this is happening, and it's moving in the direction that we wanted it to move. Probably the more surprising stuff for me, and again, this is not really OTC Desk specific, but when companies start taking on crypto as in their treasury, that kind of thing is becoming more common. I was speaking to one of our clients probably 2 days ago, and I won't name the company, but this is part of their business model now. So they had a investor meeting, and they had like a director sort of, I don't know what it's called, but they released a pack saying that the board have got together and signed off on holding crypto, Bitcoin specifically, in their company treasury.
Treasury's incredible.
And it's going to become, they're going to start buying it at some certain rate, and they're going to be accepting. Now this CEO is he's a Bitcoiner. I wouldn't say he's a maxi, but he's a Bitcoiner. And so he's been sort of thinking about this on and off for a while. And I think the whole MicroStrategy effect has really galvanized that kind of, thought process, especially since, that Saylor's, open sourced his process and all that kind of stuff. But that to me is almost wild.
Yeah.
Like the companies would sit there and go, this thing, we're not just going to use it, but we believe in it so much that we're going to hold on to it.
Yeah,
I should remember, back in the day, it was like a kebab store or something. It was literally Saylor, and this kebab store was holding on. I can't remember. It was some kind of food store, maybe like a P-Day store. I can't remember, something out of the US. I don't know where those guys were.
Only two companies that held on the balance sheet.
Yeah, and I guess Saylor probably bought all of his Bitcoins. So he's
that's wild. Yeah, we had. I guess we've seen at least in the Australian context, we've seen some real. A little more urgency from both parties, actually, both the Liberal and the Labor Party, to try and, I guess, become a friend of crypto, as we saw in the AFR today. Liberals want to be a friend of crypto. Exactly what that means, I don't know. But, we saw Trump, who just kind of I guess, even just look at the numbers. I think the numbers that they said was like 15% or so of Americans own crypto. And he just went, well, these guys are probably mostly on, for whatever reason, they looked at the demographic and said, if we get these guys over, that's going to be great for our strategy. And I guess now that dust has settled, they kind of went, you know what? They were enough of a political force, and they all kind of got behind Trump for what after the Biden administration stuffed it up so bad, that it is being widely acknowledged as part of the reason he sort of swept to power, right? And so you don't have to be, you know, Australia's seen that, and you can see that the rhetoric from both parties went, oh, geez, like, hang on a second, what percentage of Australians own crypto? Oh, it's 20%. Oh, hang on, here we go, right? And so both parties went, you know what, if these guys actually, there's 20% of people who own crypto, and maybe there's enough, I don't know how Australians vote generally when it comes to crypto, but if there's enough people within that space, we have to kind of now fight over this battleground, which is fascinating, because that was definitely, I did not expect to see that happen. I thought maybe one day it would, but not as quick as potentially we're seeing it. Yeah,
it has. It's just been a landslide. And this whole like single voter issue thing has just been amazing to watch, especially in the US. It was funny when the Trump, like when the, what's it called, the Electoral College votes were coming in, and you can kind of see state by state as the states were either, you know, accepting that Trump won or it was still in contention. And I had like the Bitcoin chart up, and I was literally marking, so every pump you could go, oh, there's a pump, okay, let's have a look. Oh yeah, there's another state that's one. And you could just, and I was marking off each pump as like, okay, that's Missouri, that's this. It was pretty funny, because you could just see the market was frothing. They're like, oh my God, this guy has now come out and said, you know, Bitcoin is a real thing and we're going to do something big about it. And then as the chances of, you know, getting in became more and more, it was amazing to watch, actually. I don't think I'll forget that moment.
A lot of people are in crypto because they want to make money, or they either believe in the space or they want to make money in the space. And there's enough self-interest, particularly financial self-interest, that I guess you can see why it becomes somewhat of a single, you know. And there's the kind of anti-establishment vote potentially with the crypto people, like, I want to do something that's not traditional financial markets related. I kind of get that vibe.
I think Trump really, like, it all coalesced very well with him, because he's pro-crypto, anti-Gary Gensler, pro-small government, like, and then pro sort of, what was it? Anti-SAB 121. Like, there's all these things kind of just fit right into the narrative that everyone was, like, the crypto guys would have loved, because, you know, they don't want like the crypto guys, the libertarian movement doesn't want these huge overreaching governments, right? And then Elon Musk turns up, the guy whose, you know, company SpaceX owns $1 billion of Bitcoin, or it's probably worth more now, going, you know, I'm going to, you know, okay, yes, he's the Doge guy, so it's sort of like the Bitcoin guys had to swallow that, but he's doing this whole thing about making government smaller, as well as the strategic reserve, if we ever see it. That'll be amazing.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild. And then in terms of what you've seen, because I guess one of the things that you see that a lot of people don't otherwise see, and I still have this conversation with people all the time. We get people who want up and find out about the OTC desk, and, you know, okay, it takes a bit of education to say, no, actually, it's a separate market from the order book market. It's a wholesale market. It's a market that the regular, you know, it's the wholesale market's growing, but it's a market that you don't have access to as an individual. You can only really participate in at size. So what are some of the things you kind of seen? Has there been any changes in that wholesale market?
The wholesale market is definitely getting sophisticated. It's pushing new products as crypto space becomes more filled with suits and less with frogs, I guess. It's sort of like they're demanding these more sophisticated products where you can, you know, trade the derivatives, trade the options, trade on all that kind of fancy stuff. And so the market's kind of rising to meet that. Something we're definitely seeing probably more out of Singapore. We're seeing a lot of interest in these structured products as well, that people kind of want to trade. And obviously this is more on the company perspective, like the institutional side of things. It's not really the retail side of things, but these guys want a way to get exposure, or at least exposure to, because, you know, it's classically a volatile market, right? So people want exposure to the volatility as well. So that's definitely something that did not exist back in the day. Places like like CMC have had these derivative products for quite a while now, and they've always been, you know, the big players, but it's just getting more and more sort of democratized as other like liquidity providers offer these products. Not something we do much of these days. We've still got a lot of people like interested in the physical asset as opposed to trying to play games with, you know, derivatives. But it's definitely getting more interest as time goes by.
Yeah. And from an independent reserve point of view, you've your background, as you mentioned before, is IT. You've become effectively a trader. You've probably traded more crypto in Australia than most of the market.
I say so.
Well into the billions. So you've done a fair few trades. With some of the, like in the context of independent reserve in Australia, we were traditionally a spot market. What are the sort of the biggest demands for like product and feature stuff that you've sort of seen then from a maturing kind of crypto audience in Australia?
At the moment, probably the most is people who want to, the leverage play is pretty, I guess, attractive to customers because they, like us, they believe in the market. Everyone believes they're early, or at least everyone hopes they're early. And so if you're early to something, how do you maximize your exposure to it? That's probably the most people have been most interested in that play. We have, the structured sort of products has been another one as well, which we're investigating. The licensing restraints on that kind of stuff is, interesting, and we have to work through that. It's not just something that we can do like we can with spot. Can I discuss spot as well, the term spot?
Yeah.
So it's that this has always interested me because in crypto, people call physical spot. So when I say physical, I mean it's not a derivative. It's you can withdraw it and put it in your own wallet, and they call that spot. That's not what spot means. A T+2 settlement. Crypto never does that. Like maybe some OTC desks do that. We don't do that. We're always T+0 same day or TOD today. But everyone for some reason calls physical spot, and then if they're talking about a derivative like a future or like a perpetual future or some kind of option, then that's called like futures or derivatives or options or whatever. But physical is called spot, and it's not technically true. So spot means T+2, as in you book a deal in and you get settled 2 days later. That's what spot means. Tom is T+1 tomorrow. It's kind of obvious. You get settled the next day. And Todd, T+0, means you get settled the same day. Crypto is all T+0, which everyone should be calling it Todd, not spot.
Okay, there you go.
But because when you're talking about retail, exchanges and whatever, you buy the crypto and you get it straight away. Like
it's all atomic,
and
it's
you can withdraw
settlement.
it straight away, kind of thing. Exactly. There's no clearinghouse. There's no settlements. There's no blah blah blah. All that stuff that you have to experience in traditional finance. But for some reason, this word spot has found its way into the narrative, into the vocabulary, and like even you see like Binance. You go to the Binance user interface, like the website. And they have spot written on the when you're not talking about derivatives or futures or some kind of thing like that, you look at your spot wallet. It's not spot, you get it straight away.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's this funny thing that just exists, and I feel like English is a living language, and soon one day spot's going to mean Todd. I don't know what Todd's going to mean, and what are we going to use for T+2? You're going to have some other name. I don't know why it's called spot. It's probably some etymology around that. But
so is spot like it's an acronym of some sort?
Maybe. Should we look it up?
We're going to Google that.
I don't know what spot stands for.
But not like on the spot or something like that.
What's not on the spot, is it?
No, that's the thing.
It's T+2. Yeah.
Oh, Jared, you can madly Google that.
Maybe Google cut all this nonsense out.
Yeah. And I guess, so there's some other stuff you've seen, I guess, in terms of the features. I know, you've been involved in the product development for a lot of stuff, even just developing the market, because we offer, independent reserve. What kind of makes us a little bit different to other exchanges is we house we are our own market, So dollars on one side, crypto on the other side. There's a lot of other exchanges out there, and it's not necessarily one business model is necessarily better than the other, but I guess we're not like a brokerage house. Really, we're not sitting there and trading with our clients and then in the back using another exchange for the actual liquidity. We house our own liquidity. Because we're in our own market, we also have to build all our own products. So around all features, I should say. So everything from being able to put in, limit orders and TOD orders to all our withdrawal functions and all that kind of stuff, and it's cold storage and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So from your point of view, I mean, how much of that? Can you sort of go back to, I guess, when you first started, what kind of was the extent of the features and what kind of stuff has come online?
Yeah, I guess so many of our changes have been driven by customer requirements. Originally, hasn't structurally changed too much, to be honest. Originally, yeah, it was a two-sided open order book, and that's what it essentially is today. We've just sort of built various layers on top of it that, give customers things that they want to do. We have, the leverage product now, which obviously is for like the sophisticated kind of investor who wants to trade with more than they have, with the risk of, obviously, if the market goes down, they can lose what they had. That's how it works. So I don't really have a good answer to that. I don't think there really is much.
Maybe it's just a shit question.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question, but the reality is we've slapped, a new layer of paint on it to bring out the new thing. But otherwise, it's all the same. You can withdraw, you can deposit, you can trade spot, you can. Nothing much has changed really. And we've got the margin product. That's probably the game changer.
That's probably the biggest thing.
And that was a long time in the working. We must have been developing that for a year and a half or more.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work that went into that to make sure it was safe, to make sure it worked as expected, to make sure it worked in high volatility periods. And I guess you're right. So there are sort of two high level participants in the spot.
Can we just call it
in the physical market? In the physical market, where we're not talking about a derivative. Yeah, there's two sort of high level structures you can set your company up as. You can have like a platform, which is more akin to the ASX. So it's just a platform that people can buy and sell on. You have your buyers, your sellers, and you create some technology that allows them to meet in the middle. Or you can sort of become the principal, and you are the one who is selling or buying crypto to or from your customer. We obviously set ourselves up as the former, and it's a difficult thing to do. So setting yourself up as a I call them crypto shops, like a shop where you're on selling crypto from somewhere else, is not as difficult, because all you're doing, you don't have to worry about liquidity. You don't have to worry about where the pricing is. The pricing is where your liquidity provider says it is. You can hook into multiple liquidity providers and get a blended price, and you can be fairly certain that it's going to be a reasonable market price. Whereas setting yourself up as a exchange where you're providing, the ability for customers to place orders on, limit orders on your exchange, it's much more difficult, not only from a technological standpoint, because you've got to have like this matching engine, but from a point of view of like, if your exchange says that Bitcoin's, $150,000, and some other exchange says it's 152, who's to say which is the correct price?
Yeah.
And the answer is they're both correct, because it's a free market. But it's a difficult one for some customers to get sometimes, because they sort of see one on one and one on the other, and they're like, well, I want the better one, obviously, at all points. Like, okay, well then you've become an arbitrage trader, and you can open accounts on every exchange out there
and move it around.
Buy low and sell high, and turn that into your job. But it's we chose to go down the route of having an order book exchange as opposed to a shop, and even the idea of a shop is probably kind of difficult because there wasn't that many places to source liquidity from back then. It's much easier now. There's heaps. Like, we are the liquidity source for many shops. Yeah, exactly. Out there.
Yep.
And it's awesome. It's great for us. Great for them if they make it work for their business model. But
I find that one interesting, because I often will find myself talking to people and they're like, well, what's the difference between you and other exchanges? And it's like, well, actually a lot of things. They're set up extremely differently, and there's some good points and there's some challenges. And one of the big challenges, I think maybe one of the biggest challenges, is if you want to build out a new product, you can't really just white label another solution. Adrian, CEO, as well as I do, and he would never sort of sacrifice. I think he's the kind of guy who would, unless he builds it and knows it's 100%, bulletproof, he's not going to take that risk. So it means that we're perhaps sometimes it can be a bit slower to get stuff out to market, but that when you roll something out that you can, it's going to be good.
Yeah, and you're not beholden to someone else as well. So there's inherent sort of
the
market
counterparty risk.
Exactly with the shops that rely on other places. If if the other venue goes down or the other venue has a problem, or they'll have to hold capital on these other venues to make the trades work. And that's inherent risk. What if you're doing this with FTX?
You know what?
I mean?
We talked about this ages ago, and it's a classic Adrian sort of example, where I wasn't on this call, but some other people had relayed it back to me, not Adrian himself, and everyone was talking about using FTX custody or whatever we were going to do with them for whatever it was. I don't know, but Adrian's just sort of questioning. He's like, well, what happens if FTX goes down? And the answer was, what do you mean? That it was met with derision, right? Of course, you can see the wisdom of that decision in hindsight, but that was, the real conversations that people had. And a lot of people would kind of just, if they didn't ask that question, I just thought, this is the challenge. This is the real risk of counterparties.
There's a real moment of sort of seeing, the emperor had no clothes, or who was caught with their pants down.
Yeah, exactly.
When, these huge companies had, and like there's the classic, what's that? There was that meme. It wasn't a meme. It was like a quote going around where that guy was like, it was like this. It was a Sequoia, and the guy was like, oh, I love this CEO, talking about Sam Bankman-Fried. And, do you remember that?
Yeah,
it was like, I love this CEO. He's so quirky, and he's playing League of Legends instead of listening to us on our shareholder call or whatever it was.
He's just so smart.
He's just too smart. He's just, I love him. He's so amazing and quirky. And it's like, no, he actually had no idea what he was doing.
You know what he's doing. I was chatting to someone about this the other day. I think I've told this story before, but the day that FTX went down, have I told you this story? But on the day FTX went down, they had planned to take out a bunch of their OTC or big clients out on the water, the Ghost 2. And they had planned to take it out. And the day FTX was going down, they said, they rang up their clients and said, you know what, it's not a good look for us to be out on the water on a super yacht the day our company's going broke. So you know what, we're not going out. But we've already paid for the boat. At that point, we didn't know that the clients had probably paid for the boat themselves anyway. But they they said,
you've already paid for the boat.
You guys have already paid for your boat, so take it out if you want it. And so some of them happened to be mutual sort of clients and friends of ours. So they rang us up and said, hey guys, you won't believe this, but FTX has got a boat. They can't come on it. You were never going to invite, but now you may as well come. Yeah. So the day the FTX went down, of course, we didn't know how it was going to be. We ended up on their boat with a bunch of their clients going, this is kind of odd.
It's absurd.
This is absolutely absurd. We're watching it and the market is absolutely tanking and we're going. But it was good to know that we had zero exposure because, some of the people there were frantically trying to get FTX and stuff off. And you heard these stories and these are really tragic stories of people who were running businesses in Australia, these brokerage potentially businesses, and it shows the risk, I guess, is that they had done nothing wrong. They thought they were doing the right thing. They'd moved various exchanges. They had parked, just for running their operations. By definition, I guess they had to leave a certain proportion of their clients' funds on a third party, right? So what happened was when FTX went down, their business got dragged down with it because half their clients' funds are on another platform. Yep. And I guess in the fine print, in the T's and C's, it would have been disclosed to those end users. But the reality was their clients didn't know that the behind the scenes where the risks were being done. It was with. Does that make sense? And
yeah, this was something that was I reckon that was the most asked question for 3 months after that whole thing happened.
What exposure do you have?
Yeah, do you have an exposure to FTX? Do you have and the same thing happened with when the US banks fell over, the Silvergates, the Silicon Valley, Signature, when they all went down. Do you have an exposure? Do you have an exposure? And it was, this is part of our risk management. This is, as we've built this desk up, we've always been risk averse, thinking about these problems. As you say, Adrian's got a great head for this, and he asks those kind of questions that seem. And I remember when I first met him, and he sort of asked these kind of questions. I'm like, what are you talking about? But now, as he asks them these days, I'm like, it's such a good call.
It's such a good
and even
call.
if it's something seems ridiculous, it's like, you got to think of these risks, and this is how we run the desk. So we had no exposure to FTX, we had no exposure to the US banks when they went down, and it just becomes such an easy conversation with customers to show them, look, if you do have money on us, it's with us. We're not farming it out to some third party. We run it properly. We run it, full segregated funds. Customers have all the money on us. We don't do anything silly. But that was the FTX thing was pretty interesting. I don't know. Did you lose any money to FTX?
I didn't have any money on FTX. No, I didn't have an FTX account, so I was fine. Everything was safely on IR. So
it was a great interface. Like,
Yeah,
I got to say, like, you
I
know,
would watch
even
the
though they're a competitor,
They had a lot. I mean, there's a lot of liquidity, and as it turned out, it was probably just them.
but even just like the mobile app, I thought it was great. It just had you could do everything on the mobile app that you could do on the, you know, the web interface, which is kind of rare. Yeah, I think I lost maybe $200 on FTX, but
not so bad.
yeah, I didn't even bother filling out the form. Yeah, you can have it.
Did they end up getting some of their money back?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's starting. I had like FTT or whatever the FTX token was, and I was like staking it, so I get, you know, 0.1% or less, like, you know, 1 bip off my trading fees or something like that. You know, never doing any trading there anyway. But
the day, you know, speaking of some crypto war stories, I remember that period, everyone, I guess it's etched in everyone's brain because for recent memory, it was a pretty sort of traumatic time. And I remember, because like, as I said, the FTX interface was very slick, right? It was obviously the team that had a big team building the front end stuff, and it looked so slick, and you could see all this liquidity, and it just seemed to be gobbling up everything, I should say. Sorry, it was gobbling up everything. It was competition now going global, and Sam Bankman-Fried was this like boy wonder and all this kind of stuff.
I love that CEO.
I think they were getting more excited about how he was like, even though he turned out to be just a lunatic, and he just didn't know what he was doing. It was more the fact that they were just going, they couldn't think of, like, they were going where they were just like, it was boom times. They were like, we're going to make squillions. FTX's valuation had gone up.
Really
200, 500x. And this lady was like, I'll just be funny about it and just throw this line out there. And it somehow got...
Of course it would, I guess. Like, they're always going to snatch that bit. Where's the money coming from?
And there's just so many funny kind of war stories you can tell from that period. I remember when Terra was going down, the peg was broken, you're like, okay, this thing's cooked. And it was just dive bombing. And people were like looking at ways to kind of arbitrage how to make money out of it. But it's kind of bobbing around. Is it dead? Is it not dead? But it went down pretty quickly. And I had so many people ring up. They're like, oh, Luna's down. Like, wow, now's the time to buy. I'm like, no, it's not. This thing is dead. It's dying in real time.
I'm afraid I cannot provide you a quote.
And I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, people were just like, oh, you know, this. And it goes to show, like, I mean, there's that element going, man, if you think this is the time to buy, you probably shouldn't be trading some of this stuff, you know.
But how do you, like, as a retail person, how do you differentiate between just a dip and a death spiral?
Right. It's a good question.
Yeah.
And it begs the question of, if we have regulated markets for tokens out there, it's like, you know, if you want to trade AFL cards and you want to pay stupid amounts of money for AFL cards, you're like, okay, good on you. Like, that's pretty dumb. But the problem is, I guess, there's this blurring of the line between, like, crypto tokens, where some are securities, like some are just like tokenized ownership of something, which is going, yeah, this is a business or something, versus just going, you know, the meme coin stuff, which is like, no, this is ridiculous. Like, he's like, think of the funniest name and just put it on a coin and going, okay, like, no one's.
But this is like, so Pump.Fun is now, you know, getting sued for this kind of stuff, right? Like, the things that they had up on their site were crazy, absolutely crazy. Like, you know about, you know, there's like literal, what was it, animal porn and that kind of stuff, you know? Like, it was...
Tell us all about it.
Well, I don't know. I never saw it because I'm a sophisticated investor. But yeah, it was like, it was just stuff, you know, on the front page of Pump.Fun. And it was just wild. And because it's sort of, you know, everyone, all the kids are, it's decentralized, unregulated, like, you can do what you want. It's like,
you can't still do illegal stuff.
Like, it's, you know, the servers are still somewhere. Someone's still going to get you. And turns out, but then even the you know, the lawsuit against Pump.Fun is a bit of a joke. So they launched their own Pump.Fun coin, the lawsuit against them, to prove that Pump.Fun, you know, it's like, what are you guys doing? Just,
it's
like,
not. I don't know where to categorize this stuff, because, as you know, there's a lot of businesses who are generally using crypto now. As we said before, there's a lot of international trade financiers, like serious business people who are trying to make honest living. I mean, there's this side of crypto which is just ridiculous, and everyone who's doing it knows it's ridiculous and is just happy to take part in the ridiculousness of it. It's a shame that people kind of associate that with, like, the other majority of work where people are trying to go, no, okay, look, guys, there's some adult stuff that we kind of need to do. Yeah. But the attention is always the silly stuff.
I'm definitely sort of on the side of less I mean, I think it definitely needs to be regulated. People need to understand the rules. But I struggle when we tell people what they can and can't do with their money if they're not, if they're aware of what they're doing, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, I don't know if this bit needs to get cut because it's kind of anti-IR. Not anti-IR, but like, we're very regulation pro, taking the first step kind of company. But I agree with that. I still think like, if someone wants to buy Fartcoin
and
they know it's just a gamble, yeah, I don't know. Like this is, and then this becomes a nanny state kind of question.
Yeah.
Like how much do we need to ensure people are doing the right thing with their money? Well,
that's up
if
to
the
them.
banks stop letting you withdraw money from your account, that's like we've gone too far. But we're already there.
Yeah, that's right. It's like if you took money out of, like it's kind of funny. If you took money, you went to the ATM and you said, I'm going to take my money out, then there's no one to police you really with what you do with it, right? It's your money, it's your cash. If you want to set it all on fire and dance a jig around it, well then that's pretty dumb. But if you want to do it, you can do that.
Yeah, but then I guess like...
But somehow when it's electronic, we go, no, you can't electronically take it. If you want to physically take it and ruin it, fine. But if you want to electronically take it, no, we can stop
even then you can't. Like if you say I want to withdraw 50 grand cash, they're going to be like, what? And they're going to ask questions. Like they just won't let you do it.
Which is odd though. That seems to me, if you just said, no, I just want to have it in, I just like $50 notes. Maybe it lends itself to going, well, only criminals use it, but it's like, that's not for you to determine. Like maybe
what you're saying is logically correct. But I think if you go to a bank and ask for 50 grand,
agreed.
won't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like to me, that almost gives me hope in a way that, if the people at the bank are saying, look, we have to ask this as a formality, but it is your money. You can do what you want. We're going to just write down what you say, file it as we're required to, and then give you your money. It's like, I guess at least that, not everyone's indoctrinated. I don't know, maybe I'm coming out too crazy here, but...
Yeah. I mean, there's still law. I mean, we have laws in this country, most countries, countries have
Do
laws.
we? Can you tell me them?
Mind-blowing.
Yeah, which laws exactly?
Stay for more alpha. But like...
This just in. We have
laws. But like what I'm saying is if you're not circumventing that law, like why are people stepping in to kind of police you from yourself?
Well, no, and this is where I was going to go to just before you were talking about that. It's because as a society, we need to always bring up the lowest common denominator, right? So if someone gets scammed, the rest of society pays to bail them out through Social Security and the dole and whatever. And so if every person got scammed, then we're all bailing these people. So we need to stop these people getting scammed because we don't want to pay for them because they have to live. We make sure no one dies in this country, and so that's why I reckon it's like we've dug ourselves this hole where we've got this social cohesion system, and it's just a society. Humans will form societies at any point. It's just given, and we need to make sure that everyone can live. Even if you're really stupid and you end up paying for the stupid people.
It's a really tough one because it's kind of like, again, we have laws and, if those laws are there and it's up to you to know what they are and live by them. It shouldn't be up to someone else to be like, just letting you know that you're not technically against the law, but like, we'll step in here to save you from yourself. What law am I breaking? None. Am I allowed to be stupid? If you want to. Oh, no, sorry, we can't let you be stupid now. It's just, you know what I'm trying to say? It just doesn't 100%. Seem... It just seems odd that if it's like, Elon Musk talks about this stuff when he did that Don Lemon episode, and Don Lemon's like, why aren't you stepping in to censor stuff? And his response was, well, we have laws. If it's illegal, we'll take it down. If it's not illegal, we won't. And he's like, but, what if it's like this or it's that? It's like, well, if it's legal, we'll take it down. But other than that, you're asking us to step in to be the arbiter of what's right and wrong. And that's not my job. We have a democracy to make those laws. They're the ones who decide what's right and wrong because we have them in those laws.
Is that the one where he like fully wrecks the guy?
Yeah. Oh, he owns him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely owns him. Yeah. And he like starts going on. He turns around on Don. He's like, you love censorship.
Yeah, that's right.
You love it. He's like, I don't love censorship. He's like, you love it so much you can taste it.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
You want it so much you can taste it. Yeah. And like Don's just like, I'm owned here, but he couldn't back down.
Yeah, he's got nothing to do.
He's got nothing back down. Yeah. For like getting back to that FTX example. We had like Sam Bankman after he went down, and like in hindsight, you kind of went, no, he wasn't a boy wonder. He was just had a lot of nerd arrogance, and he was just like, I'm just doing this thing, and there wasn't enough people close enough to him to go, what you're doing is actually illegal. Like just because you don't know that's illegal, or just because you don't think that's something you have to do.
So do you believe he didn't know?
I think he had enough nerd arrogance to like. For example, like after he like, they were receiving, for example, like they said, oh, here's FTX. And they're like, here's FTX's bank account. And they just didn't realize that FTX had to receive that money. You couldn't just send it to Alameda because they had a bank account for Alameda. They're like, well, we'll just give them Alameda's bank account. Because in their mind, it seems like they were just like, well, we have a bank account. Just give them that bank account. But there's two separate legal entities, which is the kind of thing you would do if you just didn't realize that that's wire fraud. You know what I mean? And so you're like, you're telling them that this is that company, but you're actually sending it to this other company. That's legal. And also then you go, oh shit, at some point you're like, oh, that's not right. Well, we'll just do an accounting transaction that say we moved it across. It's like, now you're committing like accounting fraud, like, you know what I mean? And he went on.
Dig upwards, stupid.
Dig upwards, stupid. Yeah, exactly. Dig upwards, stupid. And like, he went on. It's like, you know how like, and afterwards, I'm sure the lawyers were like, all right, Sam, shut up. You're in trouble. Shut up. And he was like, no. I'm a boy wonder. Maybe he believed he's getting high on his own supply, and he believed it. And he went on that media like he thought he could like schmooze all these people, yes. And he kept incriminating himself further. It's kind of like, oh, dude, you don't even know what you're doing is wrong. It's like, you know, like if you're like, you know what I mean? Like he didn't know enough. He knew enough to build a business and build a great interface and build a trading business, but he didn't have any idea about how to operationally have a business that's compliant. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. He thought he could take all these shortcuts that are there for are shortcuts and are illegal for a reason.
Yeah.
Still started with that tweet. What?
Yeah,
that was it. It was all downhill from there.
Yeah. And so much of like the industry, and you would have definitely seen this, is the point I was trying to, I guess, figure out is like the maturity is so many more people who are like, have based their career on working in this space and developing this space and bringing it up to speed and bringing it up to an acceptable level, like a professional level standard that wasn't around 6-7 years ago. The pace of things is changing so much, but there are a lot more adults involved, adults in inverted commas, in the room to kind of go, no, we still have, just because you're running a crypto business doesn't mean you don't have to follow, well-established laws around corporations.
This is something we've been fighting like at IR specifically for such a long time. We sort of, there's no regulation around how to run a crypto business. So we've basically gone, okay, we'll run it as we think is the best way to do it, which is, as a traditional company, how we manage customers' funds and all that kind of stuff. There's no one telling us to do this. And I guess it's the same with like the Sam Bankman-Fried, the FTX saga. There's no one telling them how they had to do stuff. So they just did it in the way that they thought was best, which was just completely cowboy kind of material.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Whereas, like we've sort of from the get-go, we've tried to run our business the correct way. We've got people who have done this kind of stuff before and have seen this stuff before and run it in a way that makes sense and that complies with the laws in the way that we can possibly best fit it into, even though the laws don't apply to us in this scenario. And it's kind of been interesting to see as the regulations and stuff have slowly come on board and slowly come, been applied to our business, and especially in Singapore. And that's a really great example, is that we haven't had to change very much. Because we're already running the business in the way that is expected of us. And so Singapore came out, the Monetary Authority in Singapore came out with a whole set of guidelines and rules around how to run a crypto business, and it was awesome. There's this specific licensing regime for it. And we were like, we kind of fit into that already. Yeah. We don't really have to do much. We've got to, smooth off the edges and whatever. And submit our form, and then lo and behold, we're the first ones to get licensed in Singapore. Yeah, because we don't actually have to change that much. So
yeah,
but whereas FTX trying to get licensed there, good luck.
It would never work. Yeah,
it's literally impossible. And that's another interesting point I thought as well, is that I think it was FTX in Japan. They managed to get licensed there, and they ran by the Japanese rules on custody and this and that. And if you look at the Japanese, like the people who had FTX accounts in Japan, they all did okay because the FTX business was run out of Japan properly, and the funds were custodied and segregated, and so when the whole thing went down, the Japanese side of it was like, well, here's your funds
because we kept it safe. Yeah. One-to-one segregation, all this kind of stuff. Yeah,
and whereas the rest, like the US sort of side of it and the global side of FTX, is just who knows where the money is. Yeah, it's in these random investments.
To a large extent, I guess those regulations are just a minimum set of standards for operation.
Exactly,
right? Yeah. And our chief compliance officer, he had a background working for banks. I mean, he knows the Corporations Act, and he knows, I think he even said, specifically something along the lines of, well, we just assume that at some point when regulation comes in, it's going to look a lot and feel a lot like the Corps Act. If not, we just get shoehorned into that existing one. So why not build it to spec from day one? And so places like, Singapore or the UK or even Canada, any of those common law countries, it's no surprise that we share a lot of similarities in terms of corporation, in terms of our laws, because we have a very similar legal system. In fact, funnily enough, Harry Dell mentioned this because he's a former tax law, or he's a current tax law guy, but used to work at the ATO. And he was saying, each sort of Commonwealth country kind of has its flavour that it does really well. And Australia, for example, in common law countries, tends to be the go-to place for developing tax law. We have a really fairly robust sort of tax law, and tax ATO is fairly effective, I guess, in a global standard. So a lot of Commonwealth countries would look to us to kind of lead that. In the same way, we might look to other jurisdictions to import laws that relate to, say, fintech development. So something like the MAS has now would be something that would be good for Australia to kind of look to, going, hey, their system kind of looks and feels like us. Why don't we just borrow a bit from them? Because as we know, like, there's certain stuff about the Corporations Act, like segregation of client funds, for example, something simple, right? Or like minimum standards around custody are a great idea. But like, you can't just go, you can't just put a markets license, a tier 1 markets license on something like a crypto exchange and expect it to make sense. Like, when Bitcoin moves at 20% a day, we're going to put a trading hold on it and get the CEO of Bitcoin to put out a press release as to why the things move. Like, it doesn't make sense, right? Because there's 1,000 markets. So there's certain elements that make sense, certain elements that don't make sense. So it definitely makes sense to bring in nuanced and kind of laws fit for purpose for that industry that makes sense for the industry. But it's funny because, like I said before, we haven't, we have got examples in other places like the UK, Europe even, and Singapore, where they've got laws. But why has Australia just been like, no?
Yeah.
Until now.
I mean,
until votes counted.
Now we're getting into a political realm where we're like, okay, so is 4 years long enough to make an effective change for a political party? Do we need to extend it to 10 years so you can, I agree with all that you've said. I think it's got to be difficult. Like, you need some kind of real polarizing character like Trump. And I'm not saying we want Trump here. It just wouldn't work here. But like, something like that to make these kind of changes, just to come in and go, I'm going to blow everything up and do it like in this crazy way, and let's see what happens, kind of thing. and it sounds a bit, yeehaw, but
it feels like the kind of thing just it's just Australian culture wouldn't kind of vibe with it.
No, you won't until it does.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't think, I'm not saying, we do exactly what Trump is doing. That's my point is
who would be Australia's Trump anyway?
You'd need some kind of Bob Catter style guy, right? That just comes in with literally a cowboy hat on and makes these crazy changes, and everyone gets upset, and a lot of them don't make sense. But then, it sort of almost paves the way for other people to go, maybe we can think about this a bit differently.
We can actually make change.
Maybe we can, move forward and say crypto is not only used for crime, or whatever their previous arguments were. And we can sort of see how this thing works, because it seems to be working otherwise. Oh man, what an incentive!
Well, create incentives, create
outcomes. It's all about incentives, isn't it? Like at the moment, the politicians are incentivized only to make sure, and you think like to make sure they get voted in again is what is the right incentive, but it doesn't.
That's true. They got to do a good job, I guess, to do that. But
and I feel like a lot of the times, people don't know what's good for them. And now I'm sort of getting into big government again, aren't I?
So we should stop people from taking their own money out.
We need more government, not less. Exactly. No, but honestly, like, I feel like sometimes you just need a radical thinker to say, have we tried it this way? And like, otherwise, if you're constantly just doing what everyone says you're going to do, you're going to end up with this nanny state where, anyway. Let's not get into that.
But it's a fascinating one, because you're right. Like, you forge the incentives, you kind of forge the outcomes. Like, get the right incentives and you get the right things, and it's difficult. How do we? I mean, we kind of incentivize them to be beholden to the public. That's the whole point of democracy, right? Like, you have to be beholden to the people, the constituents, to do the right thing for the majority. I guess
if the majority are voting on it, that's the problem.
Yeah,
I think, because sometimes, like, honestly, sometimes the majority don't know the right answer. They don't have enough detail. They don't have enough information.
It's a huge question, because, for example, like, Henry Ford or whatever, like, he said, well, if I listened to like the average consumer what they want, they wouldn't have said build a motor car. They would have said buy me a faster horse.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that almost ties quite nicely back to Bitcoin, right? Because Bitcoin is literally built on this incentive system where you're trying to like make sure that in an adversarial environment, the incentives are set in such a way that everyone wins, or at least that the network continues performing as it's supposed to. And so, can we make this? Can we somehow turn that into politics? I don't know. Do we have to? Yeah. Do we do like a real world asset for politicians? They each become. They're on the blockchain now.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be I mean, I've heard this argument before. I said, what if you, for any sort of new, any government sort of spending initiative, you tied that to their like retirement packages and see, you know, how would their decision making process change then? I suspect it would be radically different to what we sort of see now. Don't know what it would look like. Maybe it would become. I imagine it's actually probably not a great thing. You might be more like US politics, dare I say, or maybe I shouldn't say that because maybe they'd be upset with that. Well, I feel like it would become like, you know, Back to the Future 2 when you go to Biff World. You know what I mean? And. And you've got, you know, a couple of people who've like nailed the incentive scheme and there's just Biff Town and running the country.
Yeah. That's the rich become richer, I think. I think like you even look to Singapore for this kind of stuff. So, you know, that one of the things that they decided a long time ago was that we're going to pay our public servants properly. And so they've got, you know, they're the people who are in power there are getting paid really well. And, you know, at first you might think, oh, hang on, is this just like they, you know, sorting themselves out kind of thing? But if the public servants get paid properly, then then the brightest and the best are going to want to get a job there, and then you're going to get the best decision makers, and like theoretically everything flows on from there. And we don't sort of have that here. We don't, you know, the public servants don't get paid well, so it's just the people who are, I don't know, who are interested in power, maybe, who sort of really gravitate towards those kind of roles. Whereas in Singapore, ideally, you get the right people for the job, the people who, you know, money talks, right? And so the people who want to earn the most go to those kind of roles, and they do a really good job because they're clever. And yeah, I don't know how, like, if we could, I don't know, that's sort of a big thing. Like, you can't change it quickly, but something I think about from time to time.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Nick, you know, this is Nick's probably one of the one of the favourite characters here at Independent Reserve. So it's good to have him along. And like I said before, you know, we have now 1,000 odd clients who use our OT service, and if not active clients, certainly used in the past, and they've all dealt with you. A lot of them have dealt with you. Now, so much I know you sort of do more of an advisory role, and we've got the Singapore desk, so you probably just spend less time quoting now. But I still get this everywhere I go. Like, people ask about Nick. Do you know Nick? Is Nick a real person, or is Nick many people? A bit like Satoshi. Like, is that
yes.
is the Nick just like a general name you use for trading? I'm like, no, it's one guy. He's just
Could
working
be a
all the
guy
time.
or a girl.
Or a guy. Yeah.
That could be Nicola.
Yeah,
I'm not.
We're back to a world of only two genders, I think.
Yeah. So no, and I'm neither. I mean, I am one of them. I'm one of the genders.
This has been awesome. All right, Nick, we'll talk to you soon again.